Hey guys, welcome to the Blue Mouse Podcast. My name's Emily. I'm the full-time knitwear designer behind the Blue Mouse. So it's been a very, very long time. I have no idea what episode it is, but it's in the description and in the title, so it doesn't really matter, I guess. But yeah, it's been months. I think it's probably been since maybe April? Again, I have no idea. So it's been a very long time, horribly out of practice. But I'm going to try and get back into weekly podcasts this summer and then hopefully just continue on for the rest of the year. So I don't have a whole lot of time. My husband is on his way home, I think, and I cannot, for the life of me, record when someone is around. I don't know if anyone else feels the same way. It doesn't matter if it's a podcast, a tutorial, or an Instagram story. I can't do it. I refuse to do it. It's too uncomfortable. So he's at the studio, probably coming home soon, so I'll try and make this quick. But yeah, it's been a while. It's been a pretty difficult few months. Actually, it's been a very difficult year in general, and that's why I haven't been podcasting in the last few months. But I finally am starting to do better, so I'm gonna try and get back into podcasts. So some of you may know that I was sick. I still am sick, and for a very long time, or I guess it's relative, it felt like a very, very long time. I started having a lot of pain, just unexplained pain, in January, and I went to a lot of doctors, and everyone was like, we don't know, we don't see anything wrong. But I was just having daily pain, and so it was very frustrating, very disheartening. Got very depressed because I just kept seeing people and they were like, we don't know, and we can't help you, or some doctors didn't even really listen to me, and very frustrating. But I finally was able to find a potential solution. I went to see a doctor, or a physical therapist rather, and she was able to, I think, figure out what's wrong. And so now we're on like a treatment plan. It'll take a few months before the pain will probably be gone, but at least there's hope, and we've found potentially what's wrong and how to fix it. So yeah, I'm feeling a little better because of that, and just mentally, not physically yet, but it gave me enough of a boost out of the depressed state I was in to record this podcast. So yeah, that's kind of just a quick recap of where I've been. It's just hard year. A great year, but a hard year, if that makes sense. Like, got married, and that side of things has been amazing. I love being married. My husband is amazing. But then all the medical stuff, and we had to put our dog down a couple weeks ago, which I think is the hardest thing I've ever had to do, and it still hurts so much. But that, and that same week, I spilled a drink all over my computer, completely fried it. It was just a terrible week. But every week since has gotten a little bit better, and again, not all bad. We went on vacation in May, and we went to Europe with my in-laws, and were able to explore southern Germany and part of Austria and Switzerland as well, and it was unbelievable. It was absolutely incredible, and thankfully I was having only low-grade pain, so I wasn't distracted by that. I was actually able to enjoy it, and it was incredible. It was really, really great. So now Johnny and I I've always been really into traveling. You probably can tell by the fact that all my patterns are named after places that I have either been or would really love to go. So Johnny got the travel bug, though. We got home and he was like trying to think of the next few places that we'll go and when we want to go, and let's start saving. So that was really fun. So hopefully we'll be able to do that again next year and pick someplace else. So yeah, that was really great. I'll maybe share some photos or video or something at some point when I can get a computer and be able to organize my photos and videos from that trip. My gosh, we took so much footage, but it's all great. So that's just a sweeping life update, I guess, if you're interested. And now we can talk about some knitting. So I've been on a major sock kick lately. I got home from vacation, and that was the week that we had to put our dog down, so I didn't even really feel like knitting. I kind of wanted to, but it needed to be something kind of mindless and something small. And so that's where sock knitting came in. So that weekend before that dreaded day, my parents went out of town, so I was watching the dog the whole weekend, and I had just gotten these. They're called, I believe it's Neko. You might also pronounce them Nico, but I'm gonna say Neko bamboo like flex needles. So they are just like DPNs, but they're curved, and they have this little like flexible middle. So they're like just normal DPNs, but instead of having 3 or 4 and an extra working needle, you have 2 that your stitches are on, and then you work with the 3rd. So you can actually follow patterns that are written for Magic Loop, which are my favorite because I typically do Magic Loop. So I was testing these out and I really enjoyed them, but I wanted an easy, mindless pattern to start with. So I cast on a pair of blueberry waffle socks, which I'd always seen people talk about, but I had never actually tried it. It's a free pattern on Ravelry. Like everyone has knitted. There are so many projects, and I get why. Very simple, completely mindless. Here it is. You can't quite see the texture that well on them because the kind of yarn takes away from that, but very, very fun, very easy. And the yarn, it is, so she used to be something like the Blueberry Ridge, the Blackberry Ridge, that's what her name used to be. And she's had to change it, and she's changed it to Old Wire Row Fiber Co., I think. I'll put it in the show notes, which will be linked in the description. But this was one of her Christmas colorways. All right, well, I can't remember the name, but I bought a couple different skeins of this colorway in different weights. So I'll find it. I have it in my Ravelry project page, so I will just link it in the show notes and everything. But they're so pretty. I really love them. I would knit so many things in this colorway. I hope that she repeats it this year for Christmas, because I'll buy like a sweater's quantity. So that is what I made, and they're a bit big. So I tried my sock blockers for the first time with these, and I usually just use them to show you the socks, because normal socks, here I'll show you the difference. So I have these sock blockers from Knitography, and so I've never used them until this week, or recently I guess. So this is typically what my socks look like. They're kind of long and strange, and they look weird. They don't look correct, I guess. They just look way too long, but because they stretch out widthwise, they fit. So my foot is not this long, but because they stretch out widthwise, it shortens up. So when I knit these, people always think that they look really weird, but they work, because when you block them, they look more like this. Even these are stretched out too. So the problem I had is I can never get a 32 or a 36 stitch gauge. Almost never. I don't think I ever have. Mine are always too loose, so I typically knit fingering weight socks at a DK weight gauge, because I always get 7 stitches per inch, even knitting on tiny, tiny needles. So I knit these, which is a fingering weight, with the Blueberry Waffle Socks pattern, which is a DK. And so they were a little bit loose when I blocked them, and then I wore them and they stretched out a lot. So I'm thinking I'm gonna have to even go down to a smaller needle size if I want to do that again, at least, or use a bigger, thicker yarn, because these needles are a US 1.5, and I go down even to like a 0 or a 00 sometimes. So I might have to either use DK weight yarn with those needles or something like that. So yeah, all that to say that they stretched out a little bit, and now they're a little too loose So I'm either gonna have to knit a second pair, or these will just be like my bed socks or something where I layer them with another pair underneath. But I have a good amount of yarn left. Here's the leftover cake. So I have a good amount left, probably enough for another pair of socks if I don't make them quite as tall as those, and I'll knit them at a finer gauge. So after that, I was still kind of in a rut with designing. I just didn't have a whole lot of energy, and so I needed something very simple and easy, and I wanted something mindless. I wanted something like the blueberry waffle socks in that it's so mindless, but for fingering weight yarn. And this is what I came up with. Again, kind of hard to see the texture because of the speckling in the yarn, but I hope you get the idea. So these are going to be a new pattern. It'll be out probably at the end of the month. It's in tech editing at the moment, and then I just need to get it test knit probably next week. And it'll be a free pattern written for 6 different sizes, and the pattern continues down into the heel, which you can kind of see. I've never done that before, so that was really fun to kind of figure out how to incorporate the stitch pattern down into the heel. It was a little bit of a challenge, but it was just the right amount of challenge with the mindset that I had during that week that I was able to do it. So I went to a little kind of indie pop-up show at a local yarn store of mine and got this yarn. It's not a local dyer. It's from, I don't know that it says on here, but she's not local, but that's kind of what the indie pop-up was. But it's the Amaranth Base, which is a 100% non-superwash fingering weight yarn, which feels like so soft. There must be a lot of lanolin in it because it just kind of has that buttery feel to it that leaves your hands just feeling so soft. I love it. I picked it up and I knew that I had to get at least 1 skein of this base, and now I kind of wish I'd gotten more because they're perfect for this. It's an amazing base. I really love it. So the colorway, I don't know how you say it, plumage. You can see it there. And this is 6 and 7 fibers. I don't think I said that. But yeah, so 6 and 7 fibers in the Amaranth Base. And these will be out again, like I said, in a few weeks, probably at the end of the month. And I'm very happy with them. It's something that kind of started getting my design mojo back, if you will. So I was very unmotivated and having a hard time getting any traction, and this was an easy way to get back into it without diving into a sweater, because I have 3 sweater patterns, mostly or partially written, that just need a few tweaks, but I just need to get back into the swing of things before I can finish those off later this month. So there's that, and let's see, I'm working on another one. So I'll have to actually look this person up because she just changed her name because she's starting to dye yarn. And so her new company name is The Little Wolf Knits. She reached out to me and asked if I would try some of her yarn and give her some feedback. So I was already planning on doing a couple free sock patterns, and so I said sure, I'll try it out for my second sock pattern, which is this one right here. So I am knitting these on smaller needles than the last ones because those also kind of stretched out on my blockers, which makes sense. The blockers are kind of unnecessary. You don't really have to block your socks. You can just wash them and lay them flat. But I wanted them to look really nice for photos, so I did. And they stretched out just a little bit more than I wanted. So these are knit at a little bit of a tighter gauge for me so that when I block them, they're good. This is her color Beach Grass, and it's on her fingering base, her sock base. So here's what the texture of it looks like. Try and block that light. It's too intense. But also very, very simple. So I also carried the pattern into the heel, which you can see here, but the heel has slip stitches, and I kind of really like that almost more than when it doesn't. So up here it doesn't have slip stitches, but on the heel it does. And I kind of feel like it looks better. What do you think? I'm contemplating knitting my next sock, the pair to this one, with slip stitches throughout instead of just on the heel. But this is all I have so far. I started this on Monday, and I have the leg, heel, and about 2/3 of the foot before we start the toe. So yeah, it's going a little bit slower because I'm on smaller needles, but I'm still really enjoying it. It's very simple, easy, mindless, and that's exactly what I wanted out of some sock patterns. So this one will also be free. It probably won't come out until July because it has to go through tech editing and test knitting as well. But yeah, so I'm enjoying that. It's something that has absolutely no pressure. Sweaters to me have pressure attached to them because of all the grading and sizing you have to do, and there's grading with these. I mean, I graded that one for 6 sizes, which means that the heels have to be different and the gusset and the toes and everything is different, but it's still very few moving pieces, whereas with a sweater you have to have differing measurements like everywhere. So it's just less pressure, less work, and it's easier for me to kind of jump back into designing. Okay, so I should probably get moving a little faster. So I have been working on this baby blanket for months, and it's well overdue. I think the baby was born in May. So this is for some friends of ours who just had a baby, and it's a little baby blanket knit out of I Love This Cotton, which is from Hobby Lobby. So you really can't see the texture because it's such a light colored yarn and it's so speckly, but it's a corner to corner blanket, which means that you work from like this end down to the other corner and it creates a square. So I'll show you a smaller version of what I mean. I knit up a test swatch because that blanket pattern will be a free pattern up probably later this weekend. And I was double checking all of my like math and everything to make sure it was all written correctly. So I made a little swatch, and this is a better way of showing it to you. So you start down here at this corner and work up. So for the first half, you're increasing on the 2 sides, and then you get to the middle and you start decreasing. But you still have this eyelet detail on the edge. So this side's kind of curling, but you get the idea. So that will be out soon. I'm happy to have that done. It's a lot. That one is way too big. It's kind of a no gauge, no size pattern. You can make it with any gauge, any yarn, any needles that you have. So I didn't even really swatch. I just figured out what kind of gave me the fabric density that I wanted and went with that, and it gave me a blanket that's way bigger than I wanted or thought. It works because the baby can grow with the blankets, but at the same time it took forever. So with the next one I have to make for my sister-in-law, I am going to make it a little smaller. So it'll be in this blue yarn, which is why I have that. So that'll be out this weekend probably. It's already typed up. I'm not getting it test knit or tech edited because it's just kind of a recipe. You don't have to do a whole lot of like follow. It's hard to explain. It's a recipe, so there's no like you work for this many rows or this is how many stitches that you need to have in the middle point. It's kind of work until you get to as wide as you want it to be and then start decreasing. So there's some instruction, but not a ton. So I finally started to get the motivation to do some sweater knitting, and this is a pattern that is already fully written. I just haven't been able to grade the yardage because I had to redo the sleeves, like redo knitting the sleeves. The pattern has been adjusted, but my sample hasn't. So I need to grade the yardage based on how much I use in this new sample. So this is what it looks like. It's very, very simple, just kind of a slightly cropped simple worsted weight pullover, and I'm using the Gilead yarn from, oh my gosh, I hate saying this name because I always butcher it. Dairy Rum Natura. Always butchering it, sorry. And this is like a charcoal color. So yeah, it's very, very simple. Little V-neck detailing, and it will have, ribbed 3/4 length sleeves, and that's what I'm working on now. And yeah, very tedious having to do this over. I've had to do these sleeves, this is my 3rd time, so pretty tedious, but then I'm done. And it will look a lot different once it's been blocked and the stitches relax, because this is a non-superwash wool. So it's a natural wool, and it's not stiff per se, but it definitely has more structure than like a superwash indie dyed skein. That has incredible drape, whereas this has a little bit more structure. So once it's had time to be blocked and it can, kind of relax, it'll sit better on you, especially with the sleeves. The sleeves will look very stiff until you block them. So yeah, I think that is all of my current whips. Yeah, I don't know. I did get a few things on vacation, I guess, for acquisitions that I forgot. Okay, so I got one package before we even left for vacation, and then I bought some stuff at a yarn store in Munich. So, before we left for vacation, I guess, I got some yarn from that same company as the Gilead, but this is their Ulysses yarn, which is a DK weight, and this one is also just wool. It's all in French. I don't know why I'm even really looking. It's a 50-gram ball with 185 meters, which is like almost 200 yards. Yeah, so it's French wool, it's natural. I've got a tunic sweater, like a tunic style sweater planned, and it's all gonna be in, what do I have? I think it's all gonna be in this green, which is called Forêt or Foret, I guess would be more French. I never took French, so I don't really know how to pronounce anything. But then there's, which would be what? Genet? I don't really know, sorry. And then Caramel, that's easy. And this one is, I'm not even gonna try. That's the name of it. So these are my colorwork colors. And then this is the main body. So I might not use all 3, but I definitely really, really like them. So there'll be colorwork at the bottom near the ribbing, and then there will also be colorwork in the sleeves, I think. So it'll probably be either a bottom up or a top down drop shoulder. So when I went to Munich, I went to, okay, so it's called Die Mercerie, I think. Yeah, it was kind of on the way to where we were staying, just outside of Munich, so Johnny was kind enough to stop to let me shop for a bit. So I managed to get some Rauma Phenol PT2. This is something I've seen on many, many podcasts and from many like European knitters, but I never was really able to get my hands on it because it's more expensive to buy it from like places online, I think, and then the shipping, because you have to buy it. I think I looked one time and I could not find it in the US really, unless it was more like really, really expensive. And it's just a really rustic, I believe it's a Norwegian or some kind of Scandinavian product. So it's, I believe, a fingering weight. It might be DK, but I think it's fingering. So this is the main color that I got. It's the colorway name or the number. So my whole sweater will be this, and then I got a couple contrasting colors, and I can't find them. I have more colors. I put them in my Instagram stories. So I think there's 2 more colors, and this and the other 2 will be in the colorwork. Pretty sure it's gonna be a colorwork yoke. I might attempt steeking because it would be fun to have a yoke color work cardigan, but if you steek it, you can just work it in the round, and that sounds better to me. So on the same trend, I'm really into not super rustic like scratchy wools, but more natural wools. So in that yarn store, I asked if she had anything local, and this is from, I believe, Bavaria, so like southern Germany, and it came in quite a few natural colors. I think they're natural colors, and I wanted to get it all in this dark gray, but they didn't have enough. So I got, I think, 3 of this and 2 of the light gray, and I'll just kind of color block it maybe, or do something creative with it there. I'm thinking of doing a cardigan, like maybe a cropped fisherman rib cardigan at some point, but we'll see. That was my original plan. There's no information that came with this. So this is the 3-ply, because it says 3, and that's all the information I have. I'm pretty sure it's German wool. And she said this is what they make their traditional, like, I think she said when the men wear their lederhosen, they wear cardigans with them, or maybe they were sweaters. I think they were cardigans, and this is the traditional wool that they use to make those cardigans. So I thought that was really cool. And they're typically knit at a super dense gauge, so like the fabric is very tight, very stiff and dense. And I'm not going to do that because I don't really like to wear things like that, but it was very interesting to see some of the photos of them. And I like bringing something home from a trip that is very kind of different to that region. So I'm not gonna find that at my local yarn store. And then when we left for our trip, I decided I was gonna cast on a 3rd Laputan sweater, which is one of my sweater designs. And I had just told someone I wasn't gonna do that, but I had the yarn. I saw the yarn a few weeks before we left and knew it would make such a gorgeous Laputan, and I wanted something very easy to make on vacation that I could just kind of know how it works without having to follow a very complicated pattern. So I decided to make a slightly cropped version with a little bit longer sleeves. So the body's a little bit more cropped, but the sleeves are a little bit longer than the 3/4 length, but not a full long sleeve length. So I don't know, it's my preference, I guess. So I made this on vacation. So it's fully finished and I love it. I really, really enjoy it. It's so pretty. I love all the colors. So I used, let's see, I used Wool and Vine yarns, and I used 1 skein of her footsie base and 2 of her Volca base. Her footsie base is like a standard nylon sock yarn, so like merino nylon, and the Volca base, I believe, is her MCN. So it is I Am No Bird, Pontenute, it's another French word, sorry, and posthumous. So yeah, I really, really enjoy it. It's so soft because there's so much of that MCN in here, and I really had a fun time knitting it. It was so quick. I started this on the plane there, and we were there for 2 weeks, and I finished it before we left. So that was really awesome. Even with all the vacationing we were doing and hiking and exploring, I was still able to finish a sweater in less than 2 weeks, which was awesome. So I made it a little bit cropped, just like took, I think, maybe 2 inches off, because I didn't want it to be super cropped, but just a little bit, and then added a little bit of extra length to the sleeves. So I did end up running out of the color 1 working on my 2nd sleeve, because I used too much of it in this sleeve. I should have done a little bit more math and done more of the color 3 at the end instead, but oh well, you can't really tell. I mean, they're a little different, but who's gonna notice? The colors are so similar, especially between the 1st and 2nd one, that I don't really think you'll notice. So I really want the weather to cool down enough so that I can wear it, even though I know that's not gonna happen. But I blocked it. It feels amazing. The drape is fantastic. So I'm very, very happy with that. I look forward to wearing that this fall. And I have decided, I did a poll on this like maybe a month or two ago. But I am going to be doing a worsted weight version of Laputan. I need to talk to a couple people about that and find some yarn. But then I'm hoping maybe by like September I'll have it out. And Rhinebeck sweater, anyone? But yeah, I think that will be really fun. The reason I chose to do worsted instead of DK is because technically you could knit the fingering weight Laputan with DK weight yarn and still probably match gauge, because the fingering weight one is knit at a very loose gauge that you could knit a DK weight at a slightly tighter gauge, not tight, not stiff, but just a little bit tighter, and get the same gauge. So the fabric would just feel different, but you could meet gauge with a DK weight yarn with that pattern. I don't think I've seen anyone do it, but I've seen a lot of DK weight patterns that use the same gauge as Laputan. So you could totally do it. And that way you have kind of the option to knit it in fingering, DK, and worsted eventually. And then maybe down the line I'll do a DK weight version specifically, but I really think you could do it. So the next one is another sweater that I started on vacation. I only brought one skein with me, so I started this on the flight home, and unfortunately I didn't have the right needles with me. They were on the bag that I checked, and I had to check it because of all the yarn I bought. It was too heavy to fit in the carry-on. So I checked it, and then I wasn't able to get the right needles. So I knit probably 3/4 of the yoke on a smaller needle just to have something to do. And then when I got home, I ripped it out. And that first week, I knit the first one. Or I'm sorry, that first week I knit this entire sweater. That's insanity. I had it written and graded before I left, thankfully, because I did not have the mental energy when I got home. So I was able to just knit it up. And laying flat, it doesn't look like the sleeves line up, but they do. There is the exact same amount of rows everywhere, so it should look right when you're wearing it. And this also hasn't been blocked. So something I found a little difficult when I was knitting this the first time, or I'm sorry, when I was knitting the first sleeve, I had to knit the second sleeve, or the first sleeve, twice, because I knit it the first time on my preferred like 12-inch needles, but it changed my gauge so much, which I think I've had that happen before and never really noticed it. But when you're knitting at such a tiny little circumference, like a 12-inch needle, I was knitting so much tighter. So my sleeves were really tight and my row gauge was completely off. I think I have a photo of it. I did the first sleeve on 12-inch circulars, and then I switched. Or no, I didn't switch. I did the second sleeve on 12-inch circulars, but I was very, very mindful of how tight I was knitting. In this photo, I had finished both sleeves. One was worked way too tight, and the other one was worked on gauge because I was consciously paying attention to how tightly I was knitting. And so I lined up the cuffs of them, and you can tell how far off the striping is. Can you see that? So those stripes are supposed to line up. I like line the sleeves on each other, and those stripes are supposed to line up, but they don't. And that's because one was knit at such a tight gauge that it didn't really work. So I had to rip out that first sleeve and redo it again, still on my 12-inch circulars, but mindfully being aware of how tightly I was knitting. So I was able to fix it. It still looks a little bit loose because I haven't, like, it looks a little sloppy at the moment because I was having to knit looser on those needles to get the same gauge as the body, that it kind of looks a little sloppy, but I haven't blocked it. So when I block it, I expect it all to kind of work out. And I'm very happy with the tubular bind off. I found a very good way of doing it. I've had to wade through a bunch of different tutorials to find one, and I found a way to make it look much neater than I had been doing it in the past. So I think I'll do a video on that at some point. But yeah, I really like it, and I stopped the stripes at the same time as the body. So I had originally planned to do more stripes down here, but then, I don't know, it just kind of looked weird to me to have the stripes in the sleeves continue past the stripes in the body. So you certainly could add more stripes, there's room for it, and I'll include a note about that in the pattern. But for my preference, I just liked it this way. So yeah, it needs a good block because it's a little bit, tighter than it will be when it's blocked. And the split hem at the bottom looks funky before it's been blocked. But yeah, I think it'll be really, really great. And the neckline is a little bit snug, purposefully. I wanted it to be kind of a fitted neckline. So it's not like tight like you're gonna choke, but it's tight like fitted. And if you don't like that, then just don't use rib needles, just use your gauge needles. So yeah. And I'm having trouble, I'm having a little difficulty with my math on this. I finished all of the grading before I left for vacation, but I'm still unsure because I haven't seen anybody do it this way, and that makes me very insecure that I'm doing it wrong. So one of the very hard things about raglan sweaters is that you have to fit all of your increases in the length of your yoke. So if your yoke is more fitted, then you don't have a ton of room to work those increases. And so on the larger sizes, I didn't want the yoke to be 14 inches long to fit all of those increases. So what I'm doing is I'm fitting them all in the yoke depth that I think is good for that size. And then every third of the way down in the yoke, I'm putting in an extra increase where you're adding increases across the whole body, so that I can get those extra stitches in there without having to make the yoke very long, if that makes sense. So most of the sizes only have I need an extra 4 or 6 stitches here. But the larger sizes, it's I need an extra 15 to 20 stitches here, which is why those extra increase rows are so important. But I'm having a really hard time knowing if that's okay, if that's gonna fit right. So I don't know how I'm gonna do that. I feel bad asking people to knit up a yoke, not knowing for sure that it's gonna fit. I mean, that's how I did this one and it fits me. So I don't know. I'm just very insecure about that because I've never seen anybody do that. Have you seen anybody do it? Usually they just somehow either make the neckline really wide so that you don't have as many stitches to increase, but I also don't want to do that because I don't want the larger sizes to have a gaping neckline. So yeah, I don't know. There's not a whole lot of information on how to size things online and how to grade, so there's a lot of just trial and error and guesswork until you find something that works. So maybe I'll just ask people to knit up part of the yoke and then try it on and see if it looks alright, it fits okay. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, but that one's all done. I just have to do some finishing touches and then it will be I guess officially done. But yeah, anyway, I just wanted to show you, this is not a new finished object. I finished this, probably in April, maybe March, I don't remember, but I needed to block it. It's my Little Twig sweater by Bee Mandarines or Melody Hoffman, and I had gotten this yarn from Love Knitting to try out Spud and Chloe's new sweater base. So it's a cotton wool blend, and I had gotten a ton of puckering. I don't know if you remember, but I had gotten so much puckering at the yoke because you have to do these, what she called little twigs. And now it looks significantly better than it did. It looked all bubbly and puckery. And so what I did is I blocked it and then I went and I pulled on every single one of these lines to kind of get it to shape out like an arrow, like it should be. So it worked on some and it didn't look, all that great on others. Some of that's still pretty loose. So I'll have to play around with that and kind of fix it, but it looks significantly better. But this is a very, very heavy sweater, that's for sure. This yarn is heavy, so it's soft, but I picked it up after it dried and I was like, wow, I don't know, maybe it's still wet or something because it still feels super heavy. But it's definitely cozy, and I'll try that on later and see how it actually fits. I still haven't done that yet. So yeah, that's my last one. Not really a finished object, but you know what I mean. So yeah, longer episode than normal because there was a lot to catch you up on, lots of knitting to share. But yeah, I'll try and do this every week and hopefully have it out every weekend, maybe Fridays. I'm not going to commit to an actual day, but something around there seems good for me. So yeah, I hope to see you guys in the next episode. Thank you for sticking around. I still see so many of you subscribing every month, and it makes me very happy and excited to share things with you. So thank you for sticking around these past few months. I hope to see you again next week, and trying to put out a couple new tutorials as well. So I'll let you know when that free sock pattern drops, as well as the blanket. But if you really want to get up to date kind of information, definitely follow me on Instagram at the Blue Mouse with an underscore at the end. So yeah, see you guys next time.